Marcus Thompson woke up to the sound of his alarm, a soft melody filling the spacious bedroom of his home in Washington, D.C. As he opened his eyes, he felt a slight unease in his chest, a sensation he couldn't quite explain. The day was clear, the sky cloudless, but something lingered in the air, something invisible, like an imminent threat. As a senator, Marcus was accustomed to dealing with political tensions and daily pressures, but this feeling was different. There was something deeper, more personal, that he couldn't quite put his finger on. He got up, dressed slowly, and walked to the window of his house, observing the calm streets of the affluent neighborhood where he lived. The trees swayed slightly in the breeze, and everything seemed in order. Yet, his instinct told him that chaos was lurking. Downstairs, his wife Rebecca was preparing breakfast. She was a strong woman, a renowned attorney, and she always knew when something was wrong with her husband. As she saw him descend the stairs, she looked at him with concern. "Marcus, are you okay?" she asked, offering him a cup of coffee. He tried to smile, but the discomfort wouldn't let him relax. "I don't know, Becca," he replied, accepting the cup. "I just feel like something is about to happen." Rebecca approached and gently touched his face. "Maybe it's just stress. You've been dealing with a lot of challenges lately. Don't let it consume you." Marcus nodded, but something inside him kept telling him she was wrong. He glanced at the clock on the wall. Soon, he would have to leave for an important meeting downtown. Even so, that sense of imminent danger wouldn't leave him. James Turner was in his patrol car, driving through the streets of Washington, D.C., as he did every day. He was a veteran of the police force, hardened by years of service. Turner had seen it all: violent crimes, lies, drugs. He firmly believed the world was in a constant state of deterioration and that it was his duty, as a police officer, to maintain order at all costs. As he drove through an affluent neighborhood, his sharp eyes scanned every detail of the street. He knew that trouble was uncommon here, but routine had taught him never to let his guard down. He was always on alert, always expecting the unexpected. That's when he spotted a black luxury car turning a corner. Something about the way the vehicle moved, or maybe just the make and model, caught his attention. Turner frowned and decided to follow the car at a distance, watching its every move. As they approached a traffic light, he noticed the driver, a black man, wearing a suit, with a serious expression on his face. To Turner, this automatically triggered suspicion, a combination of ingrained biases and distrust fueled by years on the job. He sped up the patrol car and decided to pull the vehicle over. There was something about the posture of the driver that seemed out of place to him. Or maybe it was just the combination of the expensive car, the wealthy neighborhood, and his own prejudiced perception that led him to believe the man in front of him didn't belong there. "Dispatch, this is Officer Turner," he said into the radio, while activating the patrol lights. "I'm about to make a routine stop. I'll need backup." The light changed, and Turner accelerated slightly, pulling his patrol car behind the senator's car. He got out of the car and approached with steady steps, eyes fixed on the driver. Inside the vehicle, Marcus saw the red and blue lights flashing behind him. His heart raced, and the sense of imminent danger grew stronger. He pulled the car over, suddenly feeling vulnerable. Looking in the rearview mirror, he saw the white officer approaching with a tense expression on his face. "Good morning, sir," Turner said as he reached the driver's window. "May I see your license and registration?" Marcus took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. He reached for his documents and handed them to the officer, watching every move the man made. Turner took the papers and stepped back slightly, returning to his patrol car to check the information. As he waited, Marcus looked around. The world around him seemed suspended, as if on the edge of something he couldn't control. He knew that this encounter, seemingly routine, could have unexpected consequences. But what he didn't know was just how deep this would go. As Marcus waited in anticipation, a series of thoughts raced through his mind. As a senator, he was well aware of the complexities of the justice system and the impact that prejudiced attitudes could have in seemingly trivial situations. The fact that he was being pulled over for no apparent reason only intensified the unease inside him. He knew he needed to remain calm, but something in his gut warned him that this situation could easily spiral out of control. In the patrol car, James Turner continued to check Marcus's documents. Everything was in order. The car was legal, the license was valid, and to his surprise, the name Marcus Thompson appeared in a quick system search. He had just pulled over none other than a United States senator. For a moment, Turner hesitated. He knew he should return the documents and let the man go immediately, but something in his mind wouldn't let him do that. A part of him, hardened by his years on the street and the prejudices he had cultivated, refused to accept that a black man, even a senator, could be in that neighborhood so comfortably. Turner walked back to Marcus's car, handing him the documents with a stiff expression. "Everything seems to be in order, Senator Thompson," he said, almost robotically. "Right?" Marcus responded, unable to hide the tone of frustration. "Any particular reason for this stop?" Turner narrowed his eyes. The question annoyed him. He felt challenged, as if his authority were being questioned. "Just a routine check," Turner replied coldly. "You can go about your day." Marcus shook his head in disbelief, but held back. He thanked him quickly, started the car, and drove off, knowing that the incident wouldn't be easily forgotten. The feeling of discomfort persisted. Something wasn't right. Marcus Thompson walked down the marble hallway of the Senate building, feeling the familiar coldness of the walls reflecting the weight of his position. It was a strange feeling for him, being in this place of power yet still feeling the same kind of unease he had felt as a boy on the streets of the South. The morning incident with Officer James Turner continued to reverberate in his mind, not just because of what had happened, but because of what it symbolized. The walk through the Senate building brought back memories he usually kept locked away in sealed compartments of his mind. As he passed by staffers and other senators who greeted him with cordial smiles, his mind was elsewhere. He was back on the dusty streets of a small town in Alabama, where he had grown up. There, prejudice wasn't subtle or disguised. It was explicit, brutal, and often deadly. He remembered the watchful eyes of his parents, especially his mother, always aware of the lurking danger. His mother, Clarice, was a strong woman who had raised her children alone after Marcus's father was unjustly imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit. She always told Marcus to stay out of trouble because for them, trouble came uninvited. "You have to be twice as smart, twice as fast, and always 3 steps ahead," she would say. Reality was harsh, but Marcus found refuge in books. He knew that knowledge was his weapon, and with that focus, he managed to escape the trap that swallowed so many young men like him. As memories of the past flooded him, he entered his office, a spacious and elegantly decorated room with windows offering a view of the National Mall. His assistant, Sarah, was waiting with a stack of documents in hand, but as soon as she saw him, she realized something was different that day. Marcus usually entered full of energy, ready to tackle the challenges, but today, there was a shadow over him. "Good morning, Senator." Sarah's voice was calm and professional, but also filled with respect. "We have some urgent matters to address. There's a meeting on education reform in an hour, and the press is requesting a statement on the latest events in the chamber." Marcus nodded, but his mind was far away. "Sarah, could you give me a few minutes before we start? I need some time to think." Sarah nodded, surprised by the request but respecting it. She knew the senator sometimes needed moments of silence to process everything happening in his public life. Once she left, Marcus went to the window and looked out. The world seemed so calm, but inside him, the waters were churning. The incident with Turner wasn't something he could just brush aside. It wasn't just another unfortunate interaction with a prejudiced cop. It awakened buried memories, unresolved feelings, and above all, a persistent frustration with the system he was trying to change but that seemed to resist every effort. Sitting in his leather chair, Marcus began to reflect on his rise to power. He had always known his journey would be arduous, but perhaps he hadn't anticipated just how lonely it would be. Behind the success and respect he had earned, there was always the reminder that he was, and always would be, seen differently because of the color of his skin. It had marked him since the days when he was just a boy in that small town in Alabama. He remembered a specific occasion when he was only 13. He was walking home from school, his books clutched against his chest when a group of white men approached him. They laughed at him, hurling insults with words Marcus had learned to ignore, but the sense of danger was there, latent. Fortunately, his mother had instructed him well, and he managed to escape without being hurt. However, the fear and shame of that experience never left him. It was the first of many experiences that would shape his view of the world and his fight for justice. Years later, when he finally reached college, Marcus met people who helped him channel his anger and frustration into something constructive. He dove into politics, believing that he could make a real difference, that he could reform the system from within. But now, standing in his luxurious Senate office, he wondered if it was truly possible. If even the title of senator didn't protect him from everyday racism, what more could be done? As these thoughts consumed him, a gentle knock on the door pulled him from his reflections. It was Sarah, who opened the door just enough to poke her head in and remind him that the meeting was about to start. Marcus sighed and stood up, adjusting his tie. "I'm on my way, Sarah," he said with a stronger voice, trying to pull himself together. But as he headed to the meeting, the shadow of that day with Turner still lingered over him. Deep down, he knew he would have to do something about it. He couldn't simply move on. The past doesn't disappear. It just turns into a new challenge, and Marcus was ready to face it head-on. While Marcus faced his internal battle, James Turner was also dealing with his own issues. He returned to the precinct at the end of the day, still thinking about his encounter with the senator. No matter how much he tried to convince himself that he had acted correctly, a small doubt began to eat away at his mind. Had he let his prejudice influence his actions? Would he have stopped Marcus if it had been a white man driving that luxury car? Turner went home that night with those thoughts swirling in his head. He lived alone since his divorce. The loneliness in his cramped apartment only intensified his reflections. He opened a beer and threw himself onto the couch, trying to silence the voice in his mind that kept questioning his actions. Across town, Marcus was standing on his balcony, looking at the city lights on the horizon. He was determined not to let the incident go unnoticed. He knew there was something much larger at play. It wasn't just about him, but about all the black men who faced the same kind of discrimination daily. The next day, Marcus called a press conference. He was going to address the situation, but not as a direct attack on the officer who had stopped him. He wanted to use the incident as a platform to discuss the deeper issues of institutionalized racism and abuse of power in the police force. When Marcus began to speak, the cameras were all pointed at him. The media knew that the senator was a powerful and influential man, and any statement from him on the topic of police racism would have a significant impact. Last night, I, a United States senator, was stopped by the police for no apparent reason. I was treated as a suspect in a neighborhood where I live simply because of the color of my skin, Marcus said firmly. I'm not here to directly accuse the officer who stopped me, but to draw attention to a much bigger problem that affects millions of people in this country every day. We need serious reform in our police forces. We need to train our officers to see people as human beings, not as stereotypes. As Marcus spoke, James Turner watched the news from home, shocked. He hadn't expected the incident to gain so much attention. For the first time in a long while, he began to question his actions more deeply. Something inside him had shifted, but he didn't know what to do with that feeling. Marcus's statement caused a political firestorm. On one side, he was praised for his courage in exposing such an important issue. On the other, he was attacked by politicians and public figures accusing him of using his position of power to push a racial agenda. The debate intensified, and the divisions became clear. Meanwhile, Turner was called to the station for a meeting with his superiors. The police chief, a middle-aged man with a respectable track record, was concerned about the fallout from the story. They knew that any wrong move could further inflame racial tensions in the city. Turner, we need you to make a public statement about what happened, the police chief said. Did you conduct the stop correctly? Turner hesitated. For the first time in years, he wasn't sure of his own actions. He knew he had acted out of prejudice, but admitting that could mean the end of his career. I did what I thought was right at the time, Turner replied, his voice not as firm as he would have liked. The chief nodded, but Turner could tell he was also skeptical. The pressure was mounting, and Turner knew he was approaching a point of no return. As the world around Marcus and Turner seemed to be falling apart, an unexpected figure emerged. A young investigative journalist named Alicia Scott began to follow the case closely. Alicia was known for her ability to dig deep into stories, and something about the narrative between the senator and the police officer intrigued her. She began to investigate not just the incident, but the lives of both men. As she delved into Turner's background, Alicia discovered something shocking. Turner had grown up in a small town in the South, the very same town where Marcus Thompson had spent his childhood. Even more surprising, Turner and Marcus had attended the same school as children, but their lives had taken completely different paths. Turner, whose father was a conservative, strict police officer, had grown up in an environment where distrust of others was the norm. Marcus, on the other hand, had found mentors who helped him escape the cycle of poverty and prejudice. Alicia saw a deeper connection between the two, something both men had forgotten or perhaps repressed. She knew this revelation could completely change the narrative. She approached Marcus with her discovery, showing him old school photos and documents that proved the connection between him and Turner. Marcus was shocked. He had buried many memories from that time, but now confronted with the truth, he began to remember a boy named James, someone he barely knew but who had been there in the same hallways, facing the same struggles. On the other side, Turner was also confronted by the journalist, and the revelation hit him like a punch to the gut. He and Marcus had started from the same place, but while Marcus had overcome the obstacles, Turner had succumbed to fear and anger. Now, knowing the history they shared, Marcus decided he needed to confront Turner directly. He was no longer interested in turning this into a media spectacle, but rather in having an honest conversation with the man who, in a way, was a distorted reflection of himself. Marcus managed to arrange a meeting with Turner in a private room. The two men, so different in their paths, sat face to face. The silence between them was palpable. "I didn't remember you until I saw those photos," Marcus said, breaking the silence. "We grew up in the same place, but we took such different roads." Turner was clearly uncomfortable. He didn't know what to say. Part of him still wanted to cling to the idea that he had done the right thing, but another part of him could no longer deny the weight of the prejudice he had carried for so long. "I had no idea who you were," Turner said, his voice rough. "But that doesn't change what happened." Marcus nodded slowly. "I'm not here to accuse you, James. I'm here because I believe if we want to change things, we need to start by understanding each other. You might not see it now, but we are part of the same story." Turner looked down, feeling a mixture of guilt and regret. "I messed up," he admitted finally, "and I don't know how to fix it." "The first step is admitting it," Marcus said. "The second is being willing to change. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but we have to try." That conversation marked the beginning of something new for both men. They didn't become instant friends, but there was a seed of mutual understanding that could grow over time. News of the connection between Marcus and Turner quickly spread, turning the narrative of the incident into something much more complex than just a simple case of police racism. The media was fascinated by the story of two men who came from the same place but had been shaped in such different ways by the circumstances of their lives. Marcus continued to use his platform to speak about the need for police reform, but now with a greater emphasis on education, opportunities, and the role of communities in supporting those who are most vulnerable. Turner, on the other hand, began attending trainings and workshops to better understand his biases and learn healthier ways to deal with them. Both men were changing, and their once parallel paths now intersected in unexpected ways. The city of Washington, D.C., and the nation as a whole were paying attention. A year passed since the incident, and Marcus and Turner had slowly and hesitantly begun to build something resembling a friendship. They now occasionally met, discussing not just issues of race and social justice, but also their own life experiences. They found that, despite everything, they had much more in common than they had ever imagined. It was during one of these conversations that Marcus made a surprising revelation. "Remember the day you stopped me?" Marcus asked. Turner nodded. "The truth is, I knew something big was about to happen that day. I can't explain it, but I felt it." Turner chuckled lightly. "So did I," he admitted, "but I didn't know it was this." Marcus looked at him seriously. "James, I believe our paths were meant to cross. I believe we had something to learn from each other. I don't think what happened was just a coincidence." Turner remained silent for a moment, reflecting on what Marcus had said. He knew that the road to this point had been difficult, but somehow, he also felt that the journey had been necessary. And so, the two men, who had once been adversaries in a situation charged with prejudice and tension, now found themselves on the same side, fighting for a better future for everyone.